This is The Jump Around with Jim Rutledge and Pablo Iglesias, streaming live on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel.
And welcome into the Jump Around 2, 3, 4, 10.0. I don't know. Jim Rutledge alongside
you said
Pablo.
17 last time we
17.0?
It was 17 when we started the last episode and became 18 towards the end of it.
Okay. Pablo Iglesias, Jim Rutledge with you. I always make that joke because this show, I think, if you were going to kind of do a origin story of it, would have started with a show called The Badger Hour.
Yes.
Hosted by Lance Davis back in the day. Turned into the Richter Show a little bit, then turned into a podcast, and here we are with our own digital show on ESPN Madison's YouTube stream. You can listen back on the new ESPN Wisconsin app, which is outstanding. And Pablo, easy show for us today. One, our guest today is Colton Bartholomew. He'll join from the Wisconsin State Journal. He'll join the Jump Around a little bit later, around 1 o'clock. And we got plenty of stuff to get into for today's show, starting with a big guest for our friends Wilde Tausch. They had Badger head football coach Luke Fickell on Wilde Tausch earlier today. The entire interview will be, again, available on the new ESPN Wisconsin app. So go to the Apple or Android app store and download the app. And then nice thing is you can customize it, so you can just put the Jump Around as like your number one show on there, or whatever show that is. But you can that way you can listen back on demand whenever that you want. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, let's hear Luke Fickell. Let's hear his first cut.
This isn't for everybody, right? This is a grown-ass man's league, and this is a grown man's game. And if guys don't understand that, and this isn't the right thing for them, like we're not. It is what it is.
And that is not from the Wilde Tausch show. That's my fault for setting it up poorly. But that was Luke Fickell a couple days ago. And we talked with Mark Tauscher on Jim, Matt, and Molly yesterday, Pablo, and Mark said that is a tone shift, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about when we hear from Luke Fickell, but that is a tone shift of maybe how Fickell talked to the media at least the last few years. We don't know how he addressed the team, but it does give us another sign that this Badger football program, I don't know about the success and wins and losses, but is getting back to traditional old school, big boy, Big Ten football.
We've talked about this too with the hiring of Jeff Grimes, and did it not work out with the relationship between him and Phil Longo? Was the idea just too big picture, or not something that they could go after and truly succeed in? I think it is definitely, it makes me curious to see where Jeff Grimes and what this spring team can do and what type of offense can he institute. I was a little troubled when I did see that some of the spring transfer portals or spring guys were going into the transfer portal. And, yeah, what's happening here? But now looking at it, I'm like, are these guys that are going to fit into the system? But, again, just looking at it, like I'm actually I'm very confident in the ground and pound. I guess I'm just running off of a lot of momentum from this interview from Luke Fickell because, frankly, I'm trying to hone it in a little bit because of how fired up I am right now. But the reason why I feel fired up, and Riley, we've got a few clips from the Wilde Tausch interview. The reason why I feel fired up is because I sensed something in Luke Fickell that just felt different over the last few years that I've gotten to cover and be around his press conferences, that I feel like that there is that chip on the shoulder type of way that he was delivering everything. It felt like that there's, I don't want to say a new style of Wisconsin football. Feels like it's more Luke Fickell branded football of what's ahead.
We don't know what that is, to be honest. We haven't seen that at Wisconsin, and I'm excited to see what it will look like under Jeff Grimes and Luke Fickell offensively, and then Tressel maybe making some changes. We talked about the physical growth that this team has made with some of the defensive players, getting them bigger and then obviously stronger. But you mentioned, before we get back to Fickell, the portal players leaving. That's Tanner Koziel. That's a tight end who transferred in from Ball State. He is transferring out. He's visiting with Houston, I believe, today. Mark Hamper, a wide receiver that I was very excited about from Idaho, is also entering the portal. And then Derek Jansen, an offensive lineman, a former four-star offensive lineman, set to leave here in the spring portal. But on Wilde Tausch, they got Luke Fickell's reaction to his comments about that this is a grown-ass man's game.
But we do understand that when I said that idea that it's a grown-ass man's league, what I mean is, like, every guy, they don't get the luxury of growing up like I did, or even like Tausch did. I mean, like, not that he's that much younger, but I'd say even in the last, that wasn't a stab. That was just truth. Like, in the last 3 years, I would say, this league has changed, and I think that means as a younger guy in a program, you don't have nearly as much time. You got to become a pro. You got to grow up. You got to mature really fast if you want to play. And if you don't, you got to look for some of these guys that have a lot more maturity walking in the door, because that's what you're going to play against every single week.
Pablo, I'll let you react first there.
It's just brutal honesty. It's trying to figure out a lot of things happening fast. We're not numb to this idea that college sports in general is moving into this new direction where the NIL portal, the transfer portal, all of that is opening up so many different doors. And there's no knock on the players. I don't think anyone's necessarily knocking on players. I've had conversations with former college athletes too. If they were in the same situation, if somebody's throwing money at them right now because there's not a lot of guidelines, there's not a lot of barriers, nobody's blaming these players for wanting to move on and do what's right for them in this situation. But I also understand where Luke Fickell is coming from because, again, it doesn't feel like that he is walking on eggshells anymore with his statements. It feels like that he's really being honest out there and saying, like, hey, this is what needs to happen in college football. This is what needs to happen at Wisconsin. And lack of a better way, it just feels like he's like, I'm sick of whether or not he truly paid attention to the outside noise. You know how coaches and players are. It's like we block out the outside noise. I can't say whether or not however the process is at Wisconsin, but it just feels like that they might be hearing those comments. You get John Gruden that comes in this past Saturday and gives you that rah-rah speech, a true rah-rah speech of being the nightmare guy. Be the nightmare guys. Do this as a team, and that's what I sense like right off the bat from that first bite is just, again, it's like something just feels like that. There's a lot more confidence. There's a lot more moxie to it. He's not afraid to be himself. He's not trying to please anybody. He just wants to come out here and just play some rough football. Honestly,
Grit Factory back in the day, or I believe like tough, smart, dependable is how they liked to be described going into the NFL draft. How much this all matters for wins and losses, I think, is very much to be determined for the Wisconsin Badgers because you just don't know how that's going to correlate when the schedule is as hard as it is. We don't know how good the players here are. But I do like Fickell's mentality of not being a victim anymore as far as like if you don't want to be here, there's another quote he had after practice, like, we're not going to hold you hostage. Mm-hmm. We're going to bring you in here. We're going to give you fair market value. And if you want to be here, you're going to play football here. It's a grown-ass man's league, and that's what he's talking about, is that either you want to be here or you don't. And I know for a fact, and I think we all know that year one for Fickell, there were too many players here that were in their feels about Jim Leonhard not being the coach or in their feels about a new system and didn't perform like they wanted to be here. Last year, that's much more on Fickell. But over the last 2 years, I think you do have to give a little bit of grace, take away your starting quarterback, in an offense that Joe Thomas, Badger legend, Hall of Famer Joe Thomas described that, look, the biggest difference between the spread and every other offense is you're fully dependent on having a great quarterback to make the whole thing go. Now, again, I would blame the Badgers for, first year you saw Tanner Mordecai gets hurt, Braden Locke comes in, he can't play. So then the next year when you have Tyler Van Dyke, maybe don't have the same backup quarterback, but he was a little victim of circumstances. So could the Badgers have been 1 to 2 wins better, 1 win per year better over the last 2 years? I think that's a fair assessment to say where they could be. But in general, I like bringing in Grimes was the first step of putting your money where your mouth is, of like your actions with what you're saying. Like, all right, we're going to be tougher. And then the offseason conditioning. And now the way he's talking to the media and the way he's handling transfers all, I think, continues to show that he is backing up what he said at the end of the season. Let's get to his next clip here from Wilde Tausch. He talked about where he thinks things are right now in the spring.
I know for a fact that we've got a plan that I feel much better about, as opposed to even the last couple of years where it's okay now that it's hard to have a plan just because there is no structure, and you kind of just keep throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that it sticks, unfortunately, and that just hasn't boded well for us. And that's not an excuse. That's the landscape, and that's I think maybe has slowed down the development of a lot of younger guys, and but I think we're in a better place now, and I do love the development.
Well, you react again.
It does give me the confidence again. I am just more. Let's see, because what I want to see again is just talking about, and we'll get into this with Colton Bartholomew, is, how do these guys genuinely look? How are they practicing? Are they practicing hard? I mean, everything gets chippy. It's spring ball. And I guess for me, what I think about is just how confident he feels. He does feel a lot more confident coming into this spring, going into fall. I mean, obviously the injury situation with Kevin Heywood, and you lose him for the season after the ACL injury. That's a tough one to wear. But it goes back to the point that you were making too, was that Fickell had said was, if you don't want to be here, don't be here. I think he's very much putting he's getting his message across the board. I don't know if he's ever lost that, but I think now he's saying that a lot more confidently. He's not, like I said, walking on eggshells type of thing, because he came into a situation where it was like the big pomp and circumstance, and I was losing it a little bit. I was losing a little bit of that faith, and call me crazy, but I think this interview again puts me back on board. It feels like that there's a tough mentality that's going to be back on its way. I was talking to some of our teammates here in the office, Hunter Vaughn and I, a little back and forth. He says, you know what? It's kind of there's an angry element now to it with Wisconsin. You could kind of feel that tension, and I don't know, maybe if Wilde and Tausch got it out of him, especially Tauschi, because I know how close they are. But it just felt like something of, there's something where he's like, it just get ready type of vibe. I don't know if we're going to see that necessarily in the spring game at full 100%. It's going to be more of an open practice kind of vibe, but I like the idea of how he's not saying we hope that this is where we're going to go. No, there's a lot more, feels like there's a lot more direction, and this is where we want to go. This is what we're anticipating, and this is where we want to be, and this is exactly what we're aiming for. It feels like that there are specific goals versus I hope that we can get to this point. I hope that we can find a starting quarterback. I hope by the fall we'll get to this. No, he knows exactly what this team is going to look like. Yeah, and
it continues to back up what we think about his words. Now we're hoping to start to see some action. We'll ask Colton Bartholomew about what he's seen at practice, but reading different practice reports, it sounds like this is going to look a little bit more of Paul Chryst in his prime type offense. A lot of motion, a lot of running. You're going to throw deep. You're going to have big play. You're going to have big chunk plays. You can't at any level succeed as an offense without chunk plays. So this is not going to be ground and pound 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It's just going to be looking more, and you see this in the NFL, run to set up the pass. Let's make the quarterback's life easier by having a good run game with good disguise, so you can constantly, with the talent and your offensive line, and not dictating or telegraphing to the defense what you're going to do on that first down, but still know that we're going to give the ball to Jones or Dupree. They're going to get us 4. Now we're 2nd and 6. Now we can now we can play action, or we can knock out another 4. And now we're, 3rd and 2. And now we can have some real fun. And then somewhere over time, as the game goes along, a war of attrition. Having over 2,000 yards rushing as a team, having that over 5 yards per carry as a team, not having those short down and distance and goal line concerns. I think those are all going to be things that we can be excited about. As far as the spring transfers, Luke Fickell did address that with Wilde Tausch earlier as well.
That's the hard part, is there's still a little bit of an exit for people. And to be honest with you, I mean, in order for those guys to go, just so you know, in order for those guys, it had to be a mutual thing. So there are some stipulations that guys don't just have the freedom to go whenever they want. But as a program and as a team, we start to recognize, look, I don't want to find out on August 28th or September, whatever, in Tuscaloosa, that they don't really love what it is that they're doing. They aren't committed to their teammates. This is a little bit too much for them. I guess it's better that you find that out now so that you can continue to develop the people that deep down inside have it. They just haven't had the opportunity to be able to show it yet. So I think it's twofold. I think, in some ways you could say, hey, let's look at the positive. This is going to give us a chance to make sure we know the guys that truly want to be here, because if they don't, there is a little window that they could still find something that's easier for them.
Pablo?
As much as you want to give these guys an opportunity to see, hey, let's feel it out in the season, I think we've seen, especially in the first year too, I remember the terrible loss to Northwestern at home, where Hunter Waller straight up had called out, if guys don't want to be here, then they shouldn't be here. I mean, that message has been preached consistently over the years since Luke Fickell has been here. But now again, this is a recurring theme. He's finally backing it up. He's finally saying it straightforward. He's finally putting it out there. And I think this, again, gives me just that radiating confidence. It gives me a better feeling with Wisconsin football coming into here. And because again, it's just these guys, obviously they do have to have that mutual conversation. Hey, I don't know if this is fitting for me. Okay, well, let's figure out why. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And you don't want to figure out halfway into the season, especially Tuscaloosa is going to be a tough challenge. We all know that. If Wisconsin pulls off that upset, that would be amazing. But we don't know. I don't know how confident I feel about the Badgers going into Tuscaloosa to go into the schedule game a little bit there. But it is more of the bigger picture of when you reach he said it last season too, where the schedule and just what it feels more of like an NFL schedule. You can't have guys questioning whether or not that they want to be a Wisconsin Badger halfway into the season when you're trying to still figure out. Heck, you don't even want to try to still figure out what your team is going into the season because of how big each week counts. You want to go in there. Going back to the John Gruden thing, you don't want to use those early season games as almost like a preseason. You want to go in there and be just playing like bully ball, essentially. You want to show that you are a team, a force to be reckoned with. So with the transfer side of it, though, too, I think he's addressing some real things. He is addressing some real things where, again, it's not just a free-for-all free agency thing. I think he's, to be honest, also shown a little frustration, too. Not with players, but more of just the lack of control of the situation. And the guardrails that they're hoping to put back up or put up in this new type of era. So for me, again, it's just, man, I just feel like that this is, I think, again, I just got to say, it's just more confidence coming into it with how he's handling the situations.
Yeah, he seems like his back's against the wall. And if you want to take an optimistic look at this, he realizes he put himself in this position. And in large part, by bringing in Phil Longo, didn't work. And bringing in a guy who he thought that Wisconsin needed to compete. And maybe he got caught up, this is my running theory, of competing against USC, UCLA, Oregon, the teams from the Pac-12 coming in, and the Ohio States of the world. Those teams, Penn State even, that have all these supreme athletes all over the field. And maybe he got caught up in, hey, we're not going to be able to recruit and pay like that, but one way you can work around it is to spread. In college basketball, there's offenses that, all right, like Wisconsin basketball is doing it, the three-point shooting offense. You can't recruit the five-star perfect players. You can recruit players that are good at certain things. So I think his initial plan was, hey, let's just try to bring in set amount of skill players. We pay one quarterback. They make the whole thing go, and defensively we'll spend some money. We can kind of, not gimmicky, but we can't just go in there and try to compete with those five-star guys. What I think he forgot about, though, is that in chasing the premier schools, the blue-chip schools, and not the UCLA and those are other ones, but let's say Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. Who else am I missing as far as a blue-chip school? I still got to put USC in there. They got an Heisman Trophy winner 3 years ago. Yes. So, those types of schools, you forgot that you got to be able to beat the Iowas, the Minnesotas, the Nebraskas of the world. And I think he's getting back to that truism that realistically he can stockpile some wins, build up some success, then maybe continue to bring in more interest into the program, like Badger basketball did. They had, whatever you want to think about A.J. Storr, that was a successful transfer. I mean, he was second team all Big Ten. And if he had finished the year, as Fickell talked about, as someone who wanted to be here, they talk about that with football players, A.J. Storr is probably first team all Big Ten. But then the following year, Tanjay, obviously Grand Slam. So he's had two, and now we'll see what happens with the basketball players. So all it takes is one good recruiting cycle, bringing in a type of guys that fit your mentality. And I think, one, obviously the style change for basketball worked, but then two, getting guys that fit and are going to be happy about what Wisconsin can offer and what they can do. And so I think in Fickell's point, especially having to deal with year one, where you had guys here who maybe didn't want to be here, or maybe for whatever reason the Badgers kept them around, or they decided to stay and that was a mistake. I think having a room full of players that want to be here will matter and run this offense will matter. And I do think this team's going to look competent. I got 6-7 wins from them because their schedule's impossible. But 6-7 wins and looking like you belong in every game and looking like you know what you're doing in every game and not getting manhandled in every game, I think that's going to build a lot of confidence for fans going forward.
We do need to take a minute and take a step back and realize that, I guess, in the world of immediate instant gratification, as much as we were stoked that this was, what was it, Riley Yauk? I want to ask, was it the launch, right? Riley Yauk over here behind the glass. It was the launch, right?
It was the launch. I had about 75 of those magnets from the launch on my fridges at one point in time.
75 specifically.
A lot of them.
So we came into the Luke Fickell era with a lot of pomp and circumstance with the launch and everything. So hey, there was this big ordeal behind it, and still, but when you think about it big picture, that yes, it is a 2-3 year process to change a program, especially like that. That was probably why Chris McIntosh got ahead of letting go of Chris and bringing on Fickell, even though it wasn't going to be. You can't change the situation immediately, and now it almost feels like that. Even though his seat either is pretty hot or really warm at this point, this is probably the turn where you're getting the guys that you recruited, even though some of them might be transferring or some of the guys that you got from the transfer portal might be moving on. But this is a time where, your team is turning a corner. This is where you really get to see what your team is made of. This is a roster that's comprised of all of the guys that you've recruited, your team has brought on. This is truly, like, again, as we're still trying to figure out what is Luke Fickell and Wisconsin-style football, we are trying to figure that out, but I think we're a lot closer to it now than, understandably, we were in year one, where many thought that this was going to be the air raid. We were just going to basically be a video game type of offense type of thing, and that wasn't the reality. And now when I look at this, even though, again, the seat might be a little hotter, I actually feel a lot better that it's, the pressure's on now. The pressure's on, and it seems like right now, I don't want to give him an A, but it feels like that there's a lot more progress pushing towards, being better, and they like the pressure, and they want to thrive.
We have Colton Bartholomew coming up here in a little bit. I do want to get to some other news and notes here. AJ Storr transfers to Ole Miss. It's his 8th school in 8 years. Bradley made that little note there. Gus Yeldon is a guy that transferred a lot in high school and then Wisconsin. But at the same time, I'm not here to dunk on these kids. He's going to continue to get paid. I'll be honest, I think it's disgusting for Badger fans to just crap on a guy for leaving. I know it's not great that A.J. Storr didn't finish the year, but A.J. Storr didn't finish the year. I mean, he physically did, but like maybe he checked out at what, 21? I don't care. He's still a young man. Like, I'm not saying you need to be happy with how it ended with A.J. Storr at Wisconsin, but like rooting for him to fail at Kansas and then at Ole Miss and then laughing at how many times he transfers, for me, it's just gross. Just because, just let it. The past is the past. Just let it go.
It's ridiculous.
And it's like the Tyler Hero stuff. Like, I hate Tyler Hero because he's just annoying and like he's got a personality that doesn't make any sense, and he seems to be willfully ignorant of like the world and just wants to play basketball. And I think he's just an annoying person. It has nothing to do with the fact that he didn't commit to Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not it. Or he decommitted. Like, I don't care about any of that. I just find him annoying as a person in the world. He's a good basketball player, but
I do find him annoying because he put down 38 against the Bulls yesterday for me. So it's not like I expected the 9 seed, the 9 seeded Chicago Bulls or whatever they were, to move on to just wreak havoc in the NBA playoffs. But it is what it is.
The Badgers did add. I don't know if it's a composite 3-star. Riley, again, puts the 4-star in there. I've seen both places. But Ryan Hopkins, a quarterback for 2026, has been added to the Wisconsin Badgers recruiting class. They also had a QB transfer from SIU, Hunter Simmons. I've seen with some of the transfer stuff here that not only Wisconsin, but it seems like the best transfers available outside of maybe Kozil, who's leaving Wisconsin, are from a level below. That a lot of these people could be going for D2 type players to kind of level up there. And then the last thing here, obviously, Lee Corso retiring, a legend with Wisconsin College Game Day. They used to come to Madison when the Badger football team was good. I never got a chance to meet Lee, but I got a chance to see that show and everything they do there. It's pretty remarkable, and a Hall of Fame level coach. And then I think people forget that. And then obviously a legendary broadcaster who seemed, by all accounts, great person to work with, great person to be around. So he gets his one last hurrah for the opening. I don't know if it's week 0 or
August
week 1.
August 30th, I believe.
So whichever one that'll be. But yeah, that'll be his last college game day and a well-deserved goodbye for Lee Corso.
Yeah, shout out to Lee. I mean, for me, it's like, yeah, he did have the illustrious head coaching career, but it's just like, as I just smile from ear to ear right now thinking about when you watch College Game Day and you watch towards the tail end before they throw it off to the early game, that Lee is and always will be that exclamation point to end a long day of college football coverage, especially on game day. He throws on the mascot helmet. Everybody's always wondering who it is. He loves to, whether or not he doesn't mind if he caters to the crowd or not. He wants to pick the real one, and if he wants to pick the upset on the road, he'll pick the upset on the road. That is going to be what I'll miss the most. The College Game Day crew still brings a lot of fun energy. It's cool and new with McAfee on there, but Lee Corso is one of one, man. Lee Corso truly is, and it's bittersweet to see that, but what a run it was for 38 years.
Yeah, for me, and I get why you're saying bittersweet. I just say, hats off. Like,
Yeah.
It's just, you had that. It's remarkable. I don't even call it bitter. Like, it's just, I get it, time passes, and there's a passing of time, but he gets to go out on his own, do his thing. He had a full season. He gets one more time to say goodbye. So I'm happy. I'm happy for him.
Even the best things got to come to a close.
All right, this is the Jump Around, where we'll be joined by Colton Bartholomew here very soon. He joins the show around 1 o'clock here. The other couple other things here, just news and notes wise. Tanner Koziel again. Back to the idea of let's just let the kids do their thing. Lots of stuff, but he doesn't want to block, doesn't want to do this thing. I don't know what it is. If he doesn't want to be here, let him go. He was recruited, I believe, under a different offensive coordinator, so that would make sense that if he didn't like it, then maybe he leaves. And obviously, Heywood out for the year with the ACL is an issue. But the one thing here I will say for Koziel, or the Badgers in general, as far as recruiting, is that the spring portal in general, it has to go. Yeah. And I know this House versus the NCAA settlement thing is the most convoluted. I don't know what is going to be figured out. It's not like the players are actually negotiating this. It's some sort of third party representing. It's a third party deciding what they think is fair for the NCAA and the players, but the players don't have a union. There is no true representation, and a lot of this has to do with back payments, but then as part of the back payments, they want to instill some sort of 10-year agreement, roster sizes, which and some of the new things in the NCAA could kill walk-ons and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully it solves the portal, but hopefully one of the things that's in there is, one, let's call this what it is. It's not name and likeness for most of these athletes. It is pay for play. So this sounds like it would clear that up. Schools would have a salary cap. You pay off your revenue, but you couldn't be capped out maybe at $20 million is what I'm kind of seeing. And there's talk now of closing to one portal. And I think the other part of this is some sort of contract of if you sign on, you have to stay. But I think one portal would even solve the problem. And maybe it's even a matter of how many times you can transfer.
If I ask you this, I know that this has been going on for quite a bit in the courts, but 5 years ago, if we were in this situation, do you think we'd even be having this type of conversation to this level?
I don't know. I'm still so mad at the NCAA. I remember, I think I was mowing the yard or something like that, and I heard this all came through. Yeah. And I forgot who said it, but when you have to have your business and how you're doing business hit all the way to the Supreme Court, you're doing it wrong. The NCAA could have nipped this in the bud with the Ed O'Bannon case. They got all the way to the Supreme Court a million times, and they never did. They could have stepped in, and they could have said, hey, how about we negotiate? Let's figure out a way to make this fair, because the rules before were so draconian that it was insane. There was greed, but then there was pomp and circumstance, and there's one level of greed, we want all the money. But then this other level of greed of Jeremy Bloom can't make money off his YouTube videos. His was he can't get money from the Olympics to help train for the Olympics. Mm-hmm. The kicker from South Florida can't get money off of this. Then as Instagram and other things come along, the athletes can't make money off their own personal social media. And all the NCAA would stick their head in the sand and just said, I don't want to deal with any of this. Honestly, we could have lived in a world, Pablo, I truly believe, that if the players were just truly allowed through some sort of clearinghouse and you had to run it by, and the NCAA had to spend some money to add these departments in each school, it would be hey, players can get now they can get paid for their socials, they can get paid for endorsements, and that is just, the school has nothing to do with it. There's no varsity, there's no collectives, there's no involvement from the school. It just allows the players as individuals to go run camps, to go get an endorsement from a car dealer, do all that, and then had the portal cleaned up a little bit too. Like, we could have lived in that world if the NCAA was not so greedy and so arrogant and so stuck in the past that they had to try to keep everything. And I guess, arrogance is the word. They just thought it was just going to go in their favor.
Yeah. No.
It's just gross. It's like, I'm not mad at the players.
No. And you really shouldn't be mad at the players. You really shouldn't be as much as... I
understand frustration.
Yes, you could be frustrated, but we can't vilify the players here in any situation. No. As you brought it up with AJ Storr, it's a different situation with transferring 8 schools, 8 years, sure. But you can't... It goes back to our conversations that we had a few weeks ago, too, just constantly talking about Greg Gard, and it's like, the Chucky Hepburn situation. Can't tell a kid to turn away that type of money. That is something that you just gotta move past. This is a new era.
Chucky Hepburn, made honestly,
and we're not even trying to blame Chucky Hepburn here. Like, it's just an example that comes to mind.
He may have made, and Chucky's a smart guy, so I don't want to undercut what he could have made, but he might have made a decade's worth of money in 1 year.
Right,
$750,000 is a lot of money.
Yes.
And so, then obviously AJ Storr, $1 million, 10 years at $100,000 a year. That's not crazy to think that someone that's a salary, but you're not coming out of college at $100,000 usually. So right. These guys are getting life-changing money. Mm-hmm. Take the money.
Exactly, life-changing too, because you never know, like what's where it'll be going, who they're trying to help out, all these situations too. So many different layers to it.
We are excited to be joined by Colten Bartholomew from the Wisconsin State Journal, but let me tell you about our good friends at Steinhafels. Shop Beauty Rest Black Mattresses at Steinhafels. Beauty Rest Black Mattresses use sleep climate technology that transfer heat away from the body and triple-stranded pocket coil technology to give you the most advanced support system in a mattress. Right now, the new Beauty Rest Black is only $42 per month when you use Steinhafels 60-month financing. Plus, you get up to $300 in Steinhafels cash. Shop in-store or online at steinhafels.com. Look, I bought a couch from there. It is amazing. Let's talk to Colten Bartholomew next.
Time to upgrade your home? The Best Brands, Best Prices sale is here at Steinhafels. Save 10% on all in-stock and special order furniture, dining, bedroom, sofas, and so much more. And with Steinhafels' special 60-month financing, your dream room is now even more affordable. Don't miss your chance to refresh your home with the brands you love. It's the Best Brands, Best Prices sale, only at Steinhafels and steinhafels.com.
And we are thrilled to be joined by Colten Batholomew of the Wisconsin State Journal, Badger Extra, and he's been out at a lot of Badger practices. And Colten, first, thanks for taking the time to join us on the show. But then also, what have you been kind of seeing out at Badger practice with the new offensive coordinator and new things going on for the Wisconsin Badgers? So thanks for joining us. And what have you seen out at spring practices so far this year?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I think the biggest thing is when you look at this offense, I think it's a lot more reminiscent of what has been successful at Wisconsin for a long time. And I think the thing that I'm kind of, from a football sense, most pleased to see, or I guess maybe just the thing that I know is going to be more successful as team, is the amount of motion and shifting that they're doing. When you run the system that they have the last couple of years and you're basically asking your receivers to kind of win off the line of scrimmage and you're not really trying to be too deceitful against defenses, you're really asking talent to win out. And there just truly wasn't enough talent on this offense and at the skill position to just say, oh yeah, go beat your man-to-man coverage, or go beat, whatever we see play to play. So I think this system, not only because of its lean on offensive line running backs, which we know Wisconsin's going to continue to be able to recruit, but I think the way that they use motion, use different things to change where the defense's eyes are is going to really help them at least, not be in the situations where they're going 3 and out so often and not as effective as an offense as they need to be.
Colten, from a player-coach type of relationship, from what you're seeing, from what you're hearing from the guys, and Jeff Grimes and how he's meshing with this group a little bit more, what are you hearing from the players in terms of how they're just kind of vibing with him in a different way compared to Coach Longo?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's unique about what Jeff Grimes' situation is at Wisconsin is that he's an offensive coordinator that doesn't coach a position group, and that allows him to kind of float around, and you'll see him go to different groups during individual drills. We've heard from players and coaches that he's in different meetings, and pretty much every group's meeting at some point throughout the day. So I think that's really helpful for him to get the kind of holistic view of what the offense is going to be. And the thing that's been true of how Grimes has gone about his coaching career is you look at sometimes offensive coordinators, when they get hired somewhere, they need to bring in like their offensive line coach, their wide receivers coach, their quarterback coach, whatever it is, to make it work, right? Because they don't need to, or they don't feel like they can coach all those individual coaches along with the players. And Jeff Grimes is a guy that's proven that he doesn't need to bring in a cadre of assistants with him. And you've seen Wisconsin's been able to keep the guys that they had on campus already that they really liked, add in some new guys and some new assistants, some assistant position coaches as well. I think that's the biggest thing for Grimes is that he's been able to kind of float around, get to know these players, and get to know kind of the feel of each position group while he's installing an offense that's really, really different from what they were doing under Phil Longo.
Talking with Colton Bartholomew of the Wisconsin State Journal, Badger Extra, Madison.com, and one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about was the quarterback situation because, to be honest, we never really got to know how good Tanner Mordecai or Tyler Van Dyke could have been for the Badgers. We don't – I mean, look, there's an asterisk a little bit to Fickell's overall coaching record as far as when you have your starting quarterback go down in season 2 years in a row. But there's also the fact that we saw 2 years ago that Brandon Locke couldn't do it, and then they brought it back again with Locke as their quarterback, Braden Locke, excuse me. But then this year you have Billy Edwards Jr., you have Carter Smith, you have Danny O'Neal. So does the depth look better at quarterback? Do they look like they have more than one guy that could be capable to go out there and run this offense?
Probably not this season.
Okay.
I haven't been super impressed with the guys behind Edwards so far. And I know I kind of separate Carter Smith from that deal because as an early enrollee freshman, he has really impressive arm. He's probably the most mobile of all the guys on in that quarterback room right now, and that's going to pay dividends down the road, assuming he continues to develop. But you hear Jeff Grimes talk about him, and really all he wanted to say was that he's really raw, but he's talented. And one of the things that he said was, he has to learn how to play the position. So I don't think that's something you can learn in one summer, one spring, and to be expected to jump in there in the fall. Danny O'Neal was brought in part because he has a year under his belt and did play last season for San Diego State. When we watch him, I kind of see a one read and run guy, and that's not a terrible thing to have as a backup. And O'Neal's proven that he's willing to go get extra yards through contact when he needs to run. So I do think that this season does kind of come down to Billy Edwards or bust, and had a tough day today at practice. I know Fickell talked about that on Wilde Tausch, but I do think that even with the addition of Hunter Simmons coming up from Southern Illinois, who's got a tie to the staff, this really is Billy Edwards' room. And I think the belief is and hope is that Carter Smith can use this year and next offseason to get ready, and 2026 might be his time. But, yeah, I really do think it's Billy Edwards or bust when we get to the fall.
Colton, sticking on that too, Fickell mentioning that Billy Edwards did not have a superb day. From your assessment, what is your assessment in terms of how he's bounced back when facing adversity?
Yeah, no, he's done a good job when he's struggled to do things, either later in that same practice or the next day coming out to bounce back, and that's really helpful, especially when you look at Saturday because they're going to have fans in the stands, and I don't think anybody wants it to be like the launch where they saw a bunch of interceptions and got snowed on and things like that at Camp Randall. So I know they're hoping this header is a little bit better from that standpoint. So I think the thing about Edwards is you watch him at Maryland last year. He was behind Talia Tagovailoa for so long there, and was kind of their running option. In short yardage situations, they'd bring him in, and he'd go run a sweep or a power or something. And even last season with the struggling offensive line at Maryland, he would just get drilled sometimes when he had to throw. And I think that was a situation where he's shown the toughness, he's shown the ability to continue to be good and to continue through tough times. And when happen here, he's got at least a little bit of knowledge and so fall back on and try to continue to develop there.
This offense hopefully is something that will rely heavily on the run and have an effective run game. Obviously, you have Jones and Dupree, two names. That Yakimelli is another one. But there seems to be maybe a little bit of lack of depth. I don't know if that's a position they'll try to hit in the portal. Just from there's talented players and players who put good film on tape, but still what do you have there? But then also offensive line. Those two things work together. What do you feel about the overall confidence level in the offensive line and running game that the Badgers can get back to running like they had even 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I love their run game. I love what they're doing stylistically in the run game. I love the talent they've got there. Losing Kevin Heywood as a tackle is really tough because at left tackle, so much of this run game is based on the wide zone and going off tackle, and that's kind of the aim point for the offensive line and for the running game. So got to figure that out, whether that's a transfer or moving somebody over that's already on the roster. I would probably lean transfer in terms of just asking some of these young guys to jump out and play left tackle for you all season's tough. So they got to figure that out. But I think overall, what they have in terms of running back room, you mentioned Jones and Dupree. I took it for a little bit of a power back, a little bit of a different feel when he comes into a game. Lou Fickell mentioned on Tuesday, the improvement that they've seen out of him has been kind of a pleasant surprise, and I think he's starting to work his way into a guy that they could trust to put into a game, and maybe he wasn't quite there when the spring started. So I think overall this run game has – you asked about, Jim, the idea of maybe adding to the running back room. I think that's going to be tough because they've already got those 3 guys in that one class.
Yeah.
It's so great running backs in the same class, and I think they're starting to see some of the effects. That's a really tough thing to ask a transfer to maybe come into, especially an older guy that doesn't have a lot of time left, because that's kind of what I think they would want. To ask an older guy to come in and not have a whole lot of reps, you'd probably only be talking about a lower level transfer up, and then you're kind of gambling on them being able to make that transition. So I think they're probably going to stick or stand pat in the running back room, at least for this season. I know they might be trying to recruit multiple in 26, 27 classes, so we'll see how that ends up shaking out. But I think overall, because of the style they have and the talent that they have on the offensive line, they should be okay running the ball. It's really just going to come down to what they do at that left tackle spot, because I think that is a massive loss. Able to bring in somebody that's got some experience or got some really high upside talent from the portal.
Colton Bartholomew over at the Wisconsin State Journal, also Badger Extra, Badgers beat reporter. Colton, we'll leave it with one more before we let you go, or one more for me. Eugene Hilton is a guy that is just getting me so excited thinking about that, how young of a career he's got, and what's ahead of him. What are you seeing, or what have you seen from him this spring that should get Badger fans excited?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting because Trechek and Huna hasn't practiced throughout the spring dealing with a lower leg injury, and that's really opened up opportunities for Henry's been a benefactor of the fact that Trech is not there, but then Eugene Hilton's right there on that list too. He's been really the primary number 2 slot receiver. And that's something when you probably it's more to the outside. He's probably a little bit too big for a traditional slot, but I think that kind of works with how Jeff Grimes wants this offense to look, because so many times the slot guy is running straight down, having a little bit of size and to make contested catches is going to help in that realm. And then we've seen probably some of the most catches out of anybody on this roster out of Eugene Hilton. So I think the upside there, a really solid chance in the mix. Maybe not a huge role here as a freshman, but I think he's going to be out there every once in a while and making some plays. And it would be, I think, like Dupree last year, where it's like you see the flashes and you see the athleticism of why people believe in him and why he was a recruit that people are after, but maybe he's just not quite there in terms of being a featured guy yet.
Colton, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, Colten Batholomew, Wisconsin State Journal, Badger Extra. Thanks so much for all the great insight.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that's Colten Batholomew. Pablo, this has been a fun show. Just a programming note, next week, we're going to have a different show time. We'll get it out on our socials at ESPN Madison. You still will be able to find the show on the ESPN Madison YouTube stream, and you'll be able to listen back with the ESPN Wisconsin app. But we will have you got a chance to catch up with Hunter Wohler and Jack Nelson. Was that a pro day?
Yeah. I got to catch up with them after their pro day workouts. Exciting to see, just where these guys go.
That'll be next week's show, along with I got a chance to catch up with Matt Miller from ESPN on Jim, Matt, and Molly. We'll play those interviews back for you as kind of a special draft show for you, because next week a lot of our programming, especially Thursday and Friday across ESPN Wisconsin and even WTMJ, will be around the NFL draft in Green Bay. For Riley and Pablo, I'm Jim Rutledge. This has been The Jump Around. Thanks for watching.